Happy Monday, everyone. Happy Monday. Excited it's Monday. I'm going to try to adjust this a little bit so you do not see my entire ceiling. All right. You know what I found out doing these Facebook Lives? I find that using my cell phone is a lot easier. I don't know why, but definitely it seems to be a lot easier to get this thing organized than on my computer. So anyway, something new that I've been learning. All right, so I hope you guys are having a good week, and I am excited to share some happy news with you guys. I don't know if you remember, but some of you are a little bit newer to the group, but a few weeks ago, I had talked a bit about some things that I had been learning, and I'd used the fact that I had broken my wrist. Look, I can move it again. No brace. And actually, so my wrist is healing really well. I'm super excited. I had used, a few weeks ago, I had shared, like my situationship with the stairs that, damaged my wrist, and had kind of talked about that in terms of healing. And I want to keep going with this idea because if nothing else, the whole wrist incident has given me some new insights to share with you guys that I probably wouldn't have been able to share with you otherwise. So at least good metaphors. I think that's really what I'm trying to say. It's been a good metaphor. So I started PT 2 weeks ago, and my wrist, even though I had gone to like the orthopedic and he'd said that I could start not wearing the brace around my apartment, and that, it was looking really good. He was like, you got really lucky. And I said, no, God is good, right? Because I prayed a lot over this wrist for it to heal properly and perfectly and to not need surgery and everything. So, so he'd given me, clearance to begin to let the brace go. But psychologically, I was afraid. I felt that going out, particularly around stairs, and I would take the subway sometimes, and there's stairs there, and I just felt vulnerable, especially out and about. Not so much at home. At home, I felt comfortable. I was happily walking around without my brace. But when I went out and about, I just felt very vulnerable, and I was afraid to let this brace go. So this also happens to us when something, right, a life crisis happens, or, even things that happen in childhood, lessons that we learn, right? We pick up different types of braces that we rely on and become afraid of letting go. And so that's actually the type of brace that I want to speak on tonight. So I went for my first physical therapy visit a couple weeks ago, like 2 weeks ago. And my therapist said, I understand that you might want to be protective of your wrist, but you're now not helping your wrist to heal. There was a point in time when my wrist was really broken. It needed that brace. But now my bone, thankfully, in the joint was healed. And so wearing this brace, even though I felt like it was my wrist security blanket, it was holding me back. It was hindering me from being able to recover and do the things in life that I want to do. And I mean, I'm talking about like being able to carry a bag of groceries. I'm talking about cooking. I'm talking about washing dishes. I'm talking about, being able to take a cast iron skillet because I have some really heavy cookware, right? And being able to hold it to like wash it. So it was holding me back from doing those things, in addition to just like fitness, lifestyle, right? I was not able to lift weights at all. But I had goals. And the first thing my physical therapist did was, she was like, what is it that you want to do? And I was like, I want to do everything I did before. And she's like, yeah, Beth, I don't know you. What was it that you did before? And I was like, well, I want to be able to, lift weights. I want to be able to carry heavy things. I want to have no hindrances. So she was like, okay, here's some exercises. She started with a little massage. She started with some very gentle range of motion just to get it moving again and used to moving again, and begin to like stretch out the muscles because they were really kind of tight. And because they hadn't been used for so long. And so this, like loosening up, right? Relaxing the wrist, with the massage and stretching, right? And then the beginning range of motion. So what I want to talk about is, on a physical level, it's very easy to see it's very easy for the world to see when something physically is off with us, right? If we have a broken wrist, like in my case, I had this brace on it. Everyone was like, what happened to you when they saw me? So, it was like obvious. And also because it really, it was something that wasn't used to being broken for those 6 weeks that it was broken. It was kind of like really inconvenienced. But as those 6 weeks went, I began to kind of adapt. Like I was doing interesting things. So I figured out like I could carry like heavy objects like a waitress, and I would balance things on this. Sometimes I would like crouch down and use like my knees, different parts of my body. I was beginning to adapt and get used to not having the use of my wrist. So had I continued on, right, it would have become normal. This happens a lot of times when we have trauma, when we go through a traumatic event. So for me, in my case, I'll keep using myself as an example because I think it's, not nice to talk about other people, right? So I'll talk about myself. So for me, I had a traumatic event of rape happen, right? As a result of that, there were some things that I started to brace myself and started to adapt to that were not really healthy, and it was coping. And so I could bury myself in work, for example. I could find, I could keep myself busy, and by keeping busy, I didn't have to sit down and take time to deal with the emotional aspect of what I needed to heal from. And so that became like almost normal. I came to rely on being busy as a way to escape needing to do what I really needed to do. So I made a list of different types of braces that sometimes we use and rely on when we have been hurt. I feel that from my experience, a lot of times these braces we use in particular when we haven't forgiven ourselves, like when we're coming at things from a perspective of perfectionism, which is something I'm a recovering perfectionist too, right? So perfectionists tend to, compare themselves to others or feel like they need to live up to something, right? Or become afraid that if they start something new, right, that it won't be good enough. And so they kind of hold themselves back from starting it. And then they start relying on these other braces to kind of help them get through things. So that's just like one example, but here are some braces. So friends, okay? Sometimes we rely on our friends to do things for us, to take care of us. Now, it's always good to get advice from friends. So I am not knocking getting advice. I'm not knocking getting counsel. You know, you have an idea, a new business idea, or you know, there's something questionable about someone that you are starting to date or whatever, and you're just trying to figure something out a little bit, like, is this really a red flag or whatever? So it's okay to go, you know, ask one or two really close, trusted people for some advice or some perspective. So I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about every single decision having to go to a friend and beginning to rely on your friend's opinions and maybe their even approval of what you are doing. So it could look in different ways, anything from what we choose to wear, to the places that we choose to go, whether or not we choose to start a new business, go on vacation by ourselves or with other people, whatever it happens to be, right? But sometimes those friends we also can use to keep us busy, you know? And then if we're like always out and about and socially interacting and feeling like we are seeking and getting approval from friends and we're accepted, right? Then we don't necessarily have to sit down and think for ourselves, what do we really want? What do we really feel? What do we really believe? And so this can become a brace, right? It can hold us back sometimes when we're really relying on friends to help us out. It could even be things like prayer. Now, again, if you are really, you know, from a Christian perspective, right, where two or more are agreed, you know, this is a good thing, coming into agreement to get our prayers answered with other people who also have faith. But again, there can be a point where it goes over the edge and we start relying and thinking, maybe our prayers aren't as good. Our prayers aren't as effective as maybe, you know, our close friends over here. And so we start relying on our friends to pray us through situations, or, you know, instead of us figuring out and working and developing a prayer life and strengthening our prayer life. So sometimes our friends, and to be honest, I think friends are one of the best parts of life, right? They're amazing. It's amazing to have friends. I'm definitely not knocking friends, but they can become braces. They can be things, people that we begin to lean on too much and kind of hold us back and keep us from, you know, developing and flourishing into the woman or the man that we are destined to become. And so that is one type of brace. This could also be family too. In a very similar way, we could rely on family. We could have that security for belonging, that security for identity. So instead of having our own identity, which it's, you know, it's very important that we have our own identity and we know who we are. But sometimes if we are totally reliant on our family, then that could become a huge part of our identity. And I'm not saying, again, that it's bad. Of course, I identify as a daughter, for example, right? And this is a good thing to identify as a son or a daughter, for example, or a brother or a sister. But when that becomes something that you're really holding on to as a way to validate yourself or feel that you're worth something to the world of like, oh, I'm related to, you know, I am this person's son, daughter, I am this person's mother. When it becomes like how we validate ourselves, it can become like a brace. And again, when we're looking for others to validate us or provide us with those feelings of worth, then that could hinder us from our own healing path or our own flourishing path. Things like money, status, those also could be things that we hold on to as braces, right? So we could be trusting in our income, in how much money we're making or not making. And that could be the thing that we're holding on to that's holding us up. And it's like, well, I made, $500,000 last year. I'm the woman, I'm the man. And there's nothing wrong, again, right, with earning, income. That is great, right? We need it. Money's a tool. But when it starts to become something that we rely on, and use that to identify with whether or not we're successful in life, that can become something that hinders us again from developing other aspects about ourselves, about our personalities, about things we enjoy, because then maybe we're just always chasing the money instead of chasing like maybe our purpose, or chasing, I shouldn't even say chasing, but pursuing, following, stepping into, even things that we enjoy doing for fun. It could just, kind of hold us back a bit. Also, again, romantic relationships. A different type of relationship from a friendship and a family relationship. But again, this is something that we can use as a brace, and seeing ourselves as this person's girlfriend or boyfriend, this person's fiance, this person's husband or wife, right? And using like a ring to say, okay, now I've arrived in life. This is something that society has taught, I think, women more so than men. But, in order to be, I remember when I was in second grade, my grandmother's sister and brother-in-law, right? Yeah, he was her brother-in-law, came to visit, right? And so my parents were like, oh, okay, we're going to go over and see aunt and uncle. And I'm not going to give their names. We're going to go over and see aunt and uncle. And I was like, oh, okay. And I remember my grandmother's brother-in-law, I've been there 5 minutes. Like, these are people I didn't know, because they didn't live in that town. They lived in a different state, and they only came like every so often up to the north. Was like, so do you have a boyfriend? I'm like, I'm in second grade. I'm like, boyfriend, what are you talking about? So, now my parents were of different belief, right? And they were never like, when I was in second grade, so who's your boyfriend? My dad would tease me if like a boy would call the house and be like, oh, that so-and-so has a crush on you, and he'd get a kick out of it. But like, to have someone, so it was like talk that I'd never really heard. And I just remember like, here I am, like second grade, being so shocked. Like, boyfriend, I hadn't even thought about it. I was like, well, I guess there's boys at school, yeah, that I think are cute, but I'm in second grade. So yes, this can be something that people, things that they say to us from a very young age, that I feel like romantic relationships in particular, they can become what people start to use or trust in as their anchor, right? It can become like that whole identity. Like, I don't have a complete full identity until I have a Mr. Or Mrs. in front of my name. Actually, you know what? I just thought of that. Men have a Mr. in front of their name with whether they're married or not. So I shouldn't say Mr. I'm not sure. This is just something that's just occurring to me now. Anyway, I don't think it matters. But what I'm saying is that a lot of times this is something that we're taught to kind of like almost hold on to, and it can become like a brace for us. And so then sometimes people get into a relationship, right? And you'll hear this a lot of times from people. they meet this really amazing man, or they meet this really amazing woman, and they're smitten and they think this person is amazing. And then all of a sudden, like a month into it or 6 months into it, this person has changed. This person is not doing the things that they used to do. They're not pursuing their hobbies any longer. They've kind of like cleared their schedule to just make it all about this other person, right? And so then the partner is like, what happened? You're not fun anymore. I don't get it. When I met you, you were like this amazing person, and now you're kind of like deflated and smaller. So it's so important that, again, we don't use our romantic relationships as like a brace to like kind of get us through life. Like even once we're in that marriage, I'm not married, but I would imagine you would still have your own personality. Like when I get married, I'm not going to magically become a different person instantly, although I've seen people do it. It doesn't really go very well. So yes, you want to make sure that you're not, holding on to this other person, your partner, for everything. And also, I would say, this can be done. We can use substances, drugs, alcohol, to also control things, especially if we have gone through, traumas, and, alcohol or a different type of drug can be used to kind of like soothe us. Even things like caffeine. Sometimes, I like to fast from coffee because I'm like, I don't want to be addicted to the caffeine. Right? So I would like to be able to function in life healthily, freely, without needing that caffeine to like push me through the day. So anyway, it could be, different types of substances, but when we're relying on a substance to, make us happy or to calm us down, and we haven't learned how the tools for, redirecting our minds, and we haven't learned, different breathing techniques or different meditation techniques, right, to redirect our minds when they start to, feel, anxiety or whatever that happens to be, that we're trying, depression, whatever those things happen to be, that we're trying to mask, loneliness. When we start relying on a substance, then again, that is, a brace that we're holding on to instead of having to learn, which is, it's hard, right? Just like I had to learn how to, move my wrist again. When there's substance involved, we have to learn how to breathe again, so to speak, and how to function again free from those things. So it's a stretch, and it can be painful to let these things go. Right? So relationships, different, substances like wine, whatever it happens to be, like a drink, there for our enjoyment, our family, our friends are for enjoyment, right? But not for holding us back. These things should, help us to grow and inspire us to grow if they are truly healthy, if we are building healthy, relationships and having healthy lifestyles. The last thing that I want to say, and this might be a little bit controversial, but that's okay. So another brace that people can use is God or religion. So this could be, relying on a minister or a preacher to like always give us direction, or guidance. Again, it's always good to get guidance, but when it's like, I can't move to the left or the right or forward or backward without checking in with a pastor or a leader for approval, that's something that's like holding us back. It's not something that's like moving us forward into being able to flourish. And, sometimes also the expression, and now there's nothing wrong with sitting and waiting on God, right? Sometimes we just need a timeout and we just need to wait on God. Sometimes we as humans are doing the most, right? We're doing too much. Sometimes we do need to just kind of let go, relax, and trust God, right? But then there is, why have I been there? Like, why am I just sitting around doing nothing while I'm waiting? So even the story, for example, where it said Jesus like was talking to this man who hadn't been able to walk for like 30 years or something like that. And he was like, okay, well, stand up. And then when the man stood up, he was like, okay, now, well, pick up your bed and walk. So it wasn't like Jesus wasn't going to be carrying the mat for him. There's like an action, and it may not be a big action, right? It could be just something small. But when we're just like, if we're just going to sit around with our feet up, looking at our four walls, watching the paint peel, waiting for God to do something, well, sometimes God is waiting for us to do something. It may be like, okay, I want to meet someone. I'm not going to meet someone sitting on my couch. Maybe I would if I went on my phone and connected with a friend, or I connected, through a social media app, right? And made connections, right? That way. But there is some sort of action that we have to take. And so sometimes I feel that we can also use, God as a brace to not have to step forward and take that first step. It could be just, you moved to a new city and you don't know anyone. At one point I moved to New York. I didn't know a single living human. I didn't know one person when I moved here, right? And I was lonely for like a couple months. I would see people, I would meet people, I would say hi, I would talk to them. But they weren't really becoming friends. So it was kind of lonely. So I was like, God, can you give me a friend? But what did I do? When I would go out, I would talk to people. So, I had to still put myself into situations where I would meet people, and, eventually I made friends with people. So, it's about, taking that first step. And I could have just sat around on a park bench, talked to no one, and been like, God, can you give me a friend? And maybe someone would have sat down next to me. But it probably wouldn't have happened if I wasn't willing to, look over, smile, and start talking. So we want to, make sure, just think over some of these points, and, are there braces? Are there things that you are, holding on to into your life that aren't requiring you to stretch and move out of the comfort zone? And sometimes stretching and moving out of our comfort zone is absolutely incredibly painful. The PT exercises, right? To go back to the metaphor of, the brace that I had on my hand, these are not comfortable. Like, she'll give me like this putty thing to squeeze, and for some reason, like, my pinky finger is like weak and it like cracks and it hurts. It's not comfortable for me to do these things, right? But if my wrist is going to get strong again, if I'm going to have the use of my arm and my hand and be able to do the things that I want to do in life, I have to let go of the brace and stretch. So just like that, we want to make sure that we are stretching our minds and our, spirits. So, helping, transforming the way we think sometimes is required, and sometimes healing our hearts, on a spiritual level, that is required of us. And sometimes even transforming our physical environment and our physical lives. That also is important, These are not comfortable things. And so this is growth and becoming, and is not really always, it's not rainbows and butterflies, as you know. So if you are looking for someone to help you, stretch in transforming, some of your thought processes, if you're looking for someone to help you stretch with, healing and redefining your identity, because you're finding that, you have been letting your friends or your family or your romantic partnerships, or even just like your relationship with God, if you've just been, using all those things as braces to kind of hold you up instead of stretch you and grow you, then I would be happy to chat with you. And I do have a program that is designed to help, both Christian men and women stretch and grow on a emotional, on a spiritual and physical level. So I would be happy to chat with you, and you can send me a DM if you're interested. Be happy to chat with you and see if you would be a good fit. And if I could help you, or if, you would not be a good fit for my program, then of course I'm happy to, give you some guidance in maybe another direction you could go for that support. But what we really want to make sure we're doing is not just, using our relationships or, anything else in our life as a brace to just keep us standing, so to speak. We want to, be exercising and moving those emotional, we want to be stretching ourselves, right? Emotionally, spiritually, and physically. So I hope that this video, gives you a little clarity on, braces and breaking free, letting the brace go. It can be super scary. It can feel super vulnerable, right? Walking around without my brace, I'm now comfortable with it. But for the first 3-4 days when I was going out without my brace, it was kind of scary. So, healing can be, a little scary. It can be scary to kind of release those controls and to, step out onto our own, and not just have that approval from those people that we love, but to really find ourselves. It can be a little scary, but that's okay. That's normal. And so have a wonderful evening, and I would love to chat with you if you need any further support. But I will be back on maybe in a couple days, because I am doing a 30-day video challenge. So you may see me pop up in a live later this week. And have a wonderful night. Peace.